Good morning, everyone. So again, this is your instructor Elaine for your English Maritime course. So we are now on our week 56, part 2 or day 2. So this will be a continuations from our last discussion, and it's still part of the communication protocols. So as we continue, so here as we continue, we will tackle about the importance of the standardization. So why interoperability between different nations ships are very vital or important. So first, interoperability between the different nation ships is very vital because it enables the disparate naval forces to operate as a single cohesive unit, multiplying their effectiveness, enhancing the maritime security, and it could be also ensuring the rapid and coordinated responses to complex into a multi-dimensional threats. So here I have one of the reasons why interoperability is very crucial. So first is to improve combat effectiveness and tactical coordinations. So interoperable forces can share data in a real time. It also coordinate maneuvering and execute some complex joint operations without delay. So this one, it allows for a 1,000 ships navy. So where diverse, like-minded nations cooperate to a secure sea lanes. So by this, they can fight against the terrorism and manage the piracy. And another one is to enhance the situational awareness. So, meaning by a simple secure data sharing ensures that all partners have the same operational picture, that allowing for a more faster and better coordinated decision. So it allows for the integrations of the different ships or aircrafts and a name system. So ensuring that they can communicate and share data and maneuvers together without delay or confusion. And then lastly, it operational flexibility and force multiplications. So this one meaning it allowing from a different nations to function as a single cohesive unit. Commanders can distribute forces across a wide geographic area, so making it very difficult to adversaries that target all assets simultaneously. So it meaning it should be there's a faster response time. So in crisis or in conflicts, the ability to act together instantly, it allows for a rapid mobilizations reducing response times in time-sensitive situations. Another one is logistical efficiency or sustainability. So the standardized interoperable logistical procedures, such as the common fuel types and replenish techniques, allows the navies to support each other at the sea. So extending the operational reach and endurance of a task force. Another one is overcoming the resource constraints. So, with many nations, they're facing a shrinking fleet sizes. So, operating in a coalitions is necessary to maintain a credible, high-end maritime presence. And another one reason is the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So this one, it's beyond combat. Interoperability is essential for a rapid coordination response to a natural disasters or humanitarian or anything humanitarian crisis. So I have here some key components of the interoperability. So first is the what we call the technical. So this one, it is the ability of the system and network to exchange the data. And then next is the procedural. So this one, it is the alignment of the doctrine the tactics, and the standard operating procedures. And then lastly is the human, meaning building the trust, shared understanding, and professional relationships through the training and exercises. So next is some key terminologies. So I have here some MMSI number, call signs, and UTC time. So this key terminology in maritime communication and safety is specifically within the GMDSS. So including the Maritime Mobile Service Identity, or what we call the MMSI, and then some call signs. And then we also have some coordinated universal time, or UTC. So these components is to ensure that accurate identification, communication, and tracking of the vessels worldwide. So first is the what we call the MMSI number, or the Maritime Mobile Service Identity. So this is the unique 9-digit identification number that assigned to a vessel's digital selective calling, or the DSC. So this is also the IS unit, or the satellite equipment. So this one, the purpose is this is to act as a digital phone number for the ship. So it will allow for a automated direct contact with other ships or coast stations, especially during the emergencies. So first, it has a first three-digit numbers or mid. So that is the maritime identification digits that identifying the country of the registrations. And then the last six digit is specific identifier for the individual vessels. So the MMSI numbers are programmed into equipment and do not change even if the vessels change names. And then next one is what we call the call signs. So the call signs is a unique alphanumeric identifier that assigned by a national authority to a certain or to a specific vessel. So the call sign is used to identify the vessel in a voice command communications or through radio calls. It can be also through log records and to identify the ships in international database. So the call sign is a combinations of letters and numbers that often the first few characters indicates the country of the origin. So this one, the call sign is typically belongs to a vessel's radio license and may not automatically transfer if the vessel is sold. So while the MMSI is the digital automatic calling, call signs are used for the voice identification. So again, MMSI is for digital automatic calling, while call signs are used for voice identification. And then lastly, the UTC time or Coordinated Universal Time. So this one is the primary time standard used globally to regulate the clocks and times based on atomic time and formally known as the Greenwich Mean Time or the GMT. So this one, the UTC is used for all the maritime navigation, logbooks, weather reports, and emergency reporting to ensure a consistency across the time zones. So UTC does not change with seasons, providing a constant reference. And then they often referred as a Zulu time in the maritime and aviation context. So typically, or it uses the format of a 24-hour clock. So moving forward, we are now tackling about the frequency bands. So the frequency bands, so these are the specific or designed range within the electromagnetic spectrum or defined by the upper and lower limits. So and used for a transmitting the data across the telecommunication network. So I have here now one of the frequency is what we called the MF or the medium frequency. So this one it usually 300 kilohertz to 3 megahertz. So the MF it propagates the primarily the via ground waves following the curvature of the earth and can be used in the skywave at night. So the range of this MF, as I said earlier, it utilized the ground wave for the regional communication with the skywave capability at night. And also this one, the MF 500, it is between 530 to 1710 kilohertz. So it is the maritime navigations and distress or safety signals. Okay, next. If we have the medium frequency, we also have here what we call the high frequency. So this one, it started from the 3 megahertz to 30. Okay, again, the high frequency or HF. So this one is known as a short wave. So the waves or these waves reflect of the ionosphere, sorry. So it will allowing communication over household and miles and across the continent. And then we also have here what we call the very high frequency or the VHF. So this one is a line of sight propagation. So meaning that the communication is typically limited. So often there's a obstruction or the obstructed by a mountains or some buildings or high buildings. So the FM radio broadcasting. So they're also using the VHF. Okay? Okay, another topic is about the GMDRSS or what we call the Global Maritime Distress and Safety System. So the GMDSS, as we all know, is the mandatory international automated system under the SOLAS that ensures the maritime distress alerts are immediately sent to shore-based authorities and nearby ships. So the purpose of this one is to eliminate the delays in search and rescue. So how are they doing that? Is by instantly notifying the Rescue Coordination Center and ships in the vicinity. And then it requires all passengers and cargo ships of a 300 gross tonnage and above an international voyage. Okay? And then we have here the key equipment. So first is the EPIRB. So EPIRB, or the Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon. This one, it sends the satellite alerts to the authorities with a location data. And then we also have here what we call the SART. So this one, it is used to locate the survival craft via radar. And then we also have here what we called the DSC. So the DSC, or what we call the digital selective calling, this one, it automates the distress calls in the VHF, MF, and then the HF radio. And then another equipment that can be used is the Navtex. So the Navtex, it receives maritime safety information. And then lastly is what we call the satellite system. So the satellite system, It is the Inmarsat and Iridium. So they uses for the voice or the data. We also have here what we call the sea areas and requirements. So this one we have here sa the G we have here the four area base. So this is by the GMDSS. They divided the oceans into a four areas. So based on the primary radio coverage to dictate required equipment. So we have here first the A1. So this one meaning it is within the range of the VHF or coast stations. And then we have here the A2. So this one is within the range of the MF or the medium frequency coast stations. And then we have here A3. So meaning it is within the range of a geostationary satellites. And then lastly, the fourth area is what we call, or the area 4 is the polar regions outside the A1, A2, and the A3. So the system, it ensures that the ship can transmit, receive the distress alerts, search and rescue coordination, locating the maritime safety information, and bridge-to-bridge communication. It also requires a redundant, independent power sources for all equipment. So the GMDSSC areas. So as I said earlier, this is the four areas. So we're going to defining the coverage zone based on the shore station proximity dedicated or dictated by the GMDSS. So which is categorized the sea areas from A1 to A4. So the GMDSSC areas classifications. So I said earlier, we have here the C area 1, which is the VHF coverage. So in this area, it is within the radio telephone range of at least one VHF coast station. So typically with a continuous digital selective calling or the DSC alerting available. So this range typically is within 15 to 30 nautical miles. then next, the C area 2 or A2. This one is the medium frequency coverage. So in this area, it excluding the A1. So within the radio telephone coverage of at least one medium frequency coast station providing the continuous DSC alerting. So this is typically extend by 100 to 300 nm offshore, or roughly at 150 nm to 400 nm depending on the atmospheric conditions. And then we have also Sea Area A3. So this one is the satellite coverage. So in this area, it excluding the A1 and A2. And then within the coverage of an Inmarsat geostationary satellite. And then last area is the A4 or the Sea Area 4. So this is the polar regions. So generally or technically, this is the area outside the A1, A2, and A3. Okay? So if we're going to remember it very quick and make it a note. So area 1 is the VHF coverage. A2 is for the MF coverage. And then area 3 is for the satellite coverage. And then lastly, the area 4 is for the polar regions. So I have here some technical and physical constraints. So line of sight VHF. So the VHF signals are limited by the radio horizons. So the coverage that is usually limited to 20 to 30 nm, thought though it can be improved with a repeater stations. We also have terrain obstruction. So this is the mountainous coastlines or the high islands that can block the VHF signals and creating a dead zones even within the close proximity of a station. And then lastly, we have the antenna heights. So this one is the range of the offshore station that is heavily depending on the height of the antenna, with the higher antennas providing the greater coverage. So now the AIS and operational coverage. The AIS coverage, so this one is similar to VHF, AIS shore stations, typically 20 to 30 nm depending on the antenna or height and topography. And then we have the R mode positioning. So this is the AIS shore station that can be used to provide R mode positioning, acting as reference stations. So this one is to help vessels determine their position in a coastal areas. And then lastly, the range validation. So the reality or reliability of the shore-based coverage should be verified by field strength measures. So it could be rather than relying solely on theoretically calculation. So now we have here the GMDSS equipment requirements. So for SOLAS compliance, ships their mandate a specific redundant radio system tailored for the operating sea areas. So it depends on the areas, they have a specific equipment required. So the core GMD is as equipment by function. So we have here first the distress alert or the shore to ship or ship to shore. So it requires a 406 megahertz EPIRB or the float free. And then we have here the VHF radio telephony or the DSC. So this one is the VHF radio with a digital selective color or the DSC on a channel 70 and the voice on a channel 16 over 13. And then locating. So search and rescue transponders or the AIS SART. Another one is the Maritime Safety Information or the MSI. So the Navtex receiver and or Inmarsat enhanced group calling. And then we have here the bridge to bridge or the VHF radio. And then lastly, the survival craft. So this one is the portable GMDSS or the VHF transceivers. There is also a requirements by the sea areas or by declared by the SOLAS. So we have here what we call the power redundancy. So the requirements again by the sea areas or by the SOLAS. So area 1, We have here the VHF, DSC, and then the EPIRB, SART, and the NAVTEX. For the Area 2, we have here the A1, so the A1 requirements, and then the MFDSC radio. For the Area 3, they require the A2 in the Inmarsat or the satellite. Remember, the Area 3 is more on satellite frequency. And then the Area 4 is required by the A3 and the high frequency DSC radio. And then lastly, the maintenance and power. So the power redundancy. So this is the equipment must operate from the main and emergency generator plus a reserve source batteries capable of lasting at least 1 hour or 6 hours depending on the ship construction date. And then we have the maintenance. So once one or a combination of IC electronic maintenance or the GOC holder, duplicate equipment or shore-based maintenance. And then lastly, we have the automatic positioning or automatic position. So this is the updating equipment must automatically receive the GNESS data for a automatic transmission in a distress alerts. Okay, so that will be all for our week 56 part 2. So we already discussed the importance of the core framework of the GMDSS. So I know it is a large topic and we will be continued discussion about some of those equipments on our next meeting. So for now, so that will be our topic for today. So again, this is your instructor Elaine for your English Maritime course.